80 MPH to silence, the crash that killed 4, and the father who took the blame. Welcome back to the Justice and Injustice channel, where we uncover the most disturbing secrets of true crime cases. The decision takes 1 second. One single, careless moment of judgment. It's the difference between a normal Sunday evening and the end of 4 innocent lives. In September 2023, a 15-year-old boy, unlicensed, and driving a car that wasn't his, blew through a stop sign in Florida at a horrifying speed between 76 and 83 miles per hour. In his path was a vehicle carrying a grandmother and her 3 young grandchildren. 4 people were killed. The teenage driver, Ri'Shard Ferguson, has accepted his sentence in the juvenile system. But today, we're talking about the father. The man the justice system decided was ultimately responsible for the deaths of a family. Ri'Shard Ferguson, 68, the father of the driver, has just been convicted on 4 counts of manslaughter. The jury needed only 2 hours of deliberation to deliver a verdict that means Ri'Shard Ferguson now faces the possibility of life in prison. This is the crushing true crime story of a catastrophic loss, a reckless act, and a legal precedent that holds a parent criminally responsible for the devastating consequences of their son's fatal ride. Please like and subscribe if you're new to the channel. The fatal decision. A quick drive to pick up a belt. The victims were out on what should have been a normal drive. Trinidad Hernandez, 50, and her 3 beautiful grandchildren. An 11-year-old girl, a 9-year-old boy, and a 1-year-old girl. They were driving through the intersection where Trinidad Hernandez had the right-of-way. She had no stop sign. On the intersecting road, everything was wrong. Ri'Shard Ferguson, 15, was driving his father, Ri'Shard Ferguson's car. He had 3 other teenage passengers with him. They were not just speeding. They were rocketing down the road, ignoring the stop sign entirely. The impact was instant and absolute. Trinidad Hernandez and her 11-year-old granddaughter were killed instantly at the scene. The 9-year-old and the 1-year-old were rushed to the hospital, but they too were declared dead. Only the children's grandfather, Angel Hernandez, survived, sustaining severe injuries that will haunt him for the rest of his life. But the question that quickly shifted the focus from the teen driver to the father was simple. How did an unlicensed 15-year-old get behind the wheel of a deadly weapon? The denials and the testimony. A father's lie? After the crash, authorities arrived to a scene of total devastation. And in the chaos, eyewitnesses saw something strange and chilling. Family members of the 4 teens were arriving, allegedly attempting to get the boys to leave the scene. And then the rumor surfaced. One eyewitness told investigators they overheard a conversation suggesting the teen driver had his father's permission to use the vehicle despite being underage. When police tried to question the father, Ri'Shard Ferguson, he initially did not cooperate and declined to provide a sworn statement, as did his son. The true breakthrough came when investigators interviewed the 3 teenage passengers who were in the car with Ri'Shard. Their testimony was simple, chilling, and damning. All 3 boys stated that Ri'Shard Ferguson let his son use the car to drive, to pick up a belt. They testified that Ri'Shard Ferguson himself moved his vehicle to allow Ri'Shard to back the fatal car out of the driveway, and that Ri'Shard Ferguson's final words to them were, "Buckle up and come right back." Ri'Shard Ferguson took the stand in his own defense during the trial. He categorically denied the claims. He testified that he only told his son to move the car to create space in the driveway, and that the teen then drove away without his consent. It became a battle of testimony, a father's word against the consistent statements of 3 teenagers, and the legal principle that in Florida, a parent is liable for the consequences of a minor they allow to operate a vehicle. The verdict: accountability for 4 lives. The jury had heard the evidence, seen the crash photos including prosecutors' evidence showing the car may have been traveling over 100 miles per hour, and listened to the conflicting stories. They deliberated for a little over 2 hours. The verdict: guilty on all 4 counts of manslaughter. This is a legal thunderclap. In Florida, parents can be held criminally liable for their minor children's actions, particularly when it comes to the dangerous instrumentality that is a motor vehicle. By allowing his unlicensed, underage son to operate the car, Ri'Shard Ferguson was deemed to have committed a reckless act that directly resulted in the deaths of Trinidad Hernandez and her 3 young grandchildren. The sentencing phase has not been set, but the stakes are astronomical. For 4 counts of manslaughter, Ri'Shard Ferguson faces a possible sentence ranging from 37 years to life in prison. The 2 sentences: juvenile versus life in prison. It's a tragic paradox of justice. The boy who was physically behind the wheel that night has already faced his punishment through the juvenile system. Ri'Shard Ferguson previously pleaded guilty to manslaughter charges. His sentence, the maximum allowed for a juvenile, requires him to remain in juvenile custody until the age of 19, followed by 2 years of supervision until he is 21. His attorney noted the teen accepted responsibility for his actions and wanted to spare the victim's family the trauma of a trial. The father, Ri'Shard Ferguson, is the one now staring down the cold reality of life behind bars. The family of the victims, who lost a grandmother and 3 children, recognized the profound, painful nature of the verdict. The mother of the children and daughter of Trinidad Hernandez reflected on the verdict, stating there were no winners in the case, but that the punishment was appropriate. "My spirit grieves that a father is locked up and a son is locked up," she said. "You still have to be responsible for your children and what you do. This is a lesson for other parents. The crushing consequence, a lesson for every parent. This tragedy in Florida is a chilling warning to every parent across the United States. When you hand over the keys, you are handing over a potential instrument of death. And when you grant that access to an unlicensed minor, the consequences of their recklessness, their speed, and their teenage judgment will fall on you." 4 lives were extinguished in a devastating 80-mile-per-hour impact that could have been prevented with a simple, responsible no. Now, 4 young lives are gone forever. The teenage driver will carry the weight of that night for the rest of his life. And the father, Ri'Shard Ferguson, will likely spend the remainder of his years in a prison cell, serving a sentence for a crime he didn't physically commit, but one the jury concluded he enabled with a single reckless permission. The cost of that 1 second of bad judgment? A family destroyed and a life sentenced. Ri'Shard Ferguson faces 37 years to life for allowing his son to drive. Do you agree with the jury that the father should bear criminal responsibility for the crash? Or do you believe the juvenile's sentence was sufficient? Share your thoughts in the comments below.